Okay, so recently inside of my Facebook group here, I've asked the question, where do you feel you are struggling the most with your publishing? And as we can see here, we have quite a few replies. So what I want to do in this video, and I want to try and do this from time to time, is just kind of do a few random tips and just give my opinion on things that people are actually struggling with, instead of just making videos where I think people are struggling. Okay, so going to get into this in just a second, but first here, if you'd like to join this Facebook group, we have over 400 like-minded members, and I'd love to connect with you there as well. And you can always ask any question that you like in this group, and if you find that the questions aren't getting answered, then the chances are that I'm going to start making videos around these questions. Okay, and just very quickly before we get started, my original plan for this video was to make a video about my publishing journey the last 2.5 to 3 years and kind of implement these questions and concerns into that video. And after recording that video, it was an hour long, and I understand not everyone wants to keep watching long videos, hence why I'm making a short one here. But if you are interested to hear about my entire publishing journey, of all the things that I've struggled with, the things that I've had success with, the niches I've had success with, the things that I've struggled with mentally, because I know the mental side of things is a huge issue for a lot of people in this business as well, then if you want to see that video, it would be a long one and I would need to make it again. But if you want to see that, leave a comment in the description, leave a comment in the down below and just say that you want to see that type of video. Okay. Okay, so let's get started, and I see this issue quite a lot, and that's marketing. So I'm not quite sure, as Judy says here, definitely marketing, and a few people have liked this comment. So I'm not quite sure what people mean by marketing, and what I think people mean by marketing is that they want to market their books from external sources outside of Amazon, so things like Pinterest, social media platforms, things like that. So I think people seem to be under the impression when it comes to marketing that there's this kind of golden ticket that if you market your books on social media platforms and things like that, that you're going to start generating crazy sales or even more sales than you would just from Amazon. And to be perfectly honest here, I've never marketed my books outside of Amazon. So if you're someone that's struggling to make sales on Amazon, then the least of your concerns should be to market your book elsewhere, because Amazon is a huge marketplace. I think it must be the biggest on the internet, and it is for people that are looking to buy things. So the traffic here that we're getting onto Amazon is incredibly targeted. So if you're not able to sell your books on a marketplace that caters to people that are looking to buy things that you're putting out there, then marketing your book elsewhere isn't going to do anything for your sales, in my opinion. So you're probably missing out on the fundamentals of your business, and you need to get them right before you look at marketing your book elsewhere. And then from there, even when you are making organic sales on Amazon, you should be looking toward Amazon ads. Okay, so that's my thoughts here on marketing. Now, when it comes to actually marketing on Amazon, I think people seem to forget that your listing, your title and your subtitle, your description, and most importantly, your front cover, these are ultimately going to be the things that decide whether someone buys your book or not. So no matter where you have traffic coming from and how much traffic you have going to your book, you still need to get these fundamental things right. So for anyone that's worried about marketing, my advice here would be to just focus, especially if you're struggling to make sales, it would be to focus on who you're actually selling your book to. So think about who you're selling your book to and create your listing around that. This is kind of on-site marketing, let's call it that. So things like the title for your book, the subtitle for your book, and the front cover of your book. This is the most important aspect of marketing that you should be worrying about for now. And then when it comes to it, you can move on to things like Amazon ads. Okay, so moving on, we have making our first sale. And this is a big one for a lot of people. And it's not something I feel like I obviously can't answer this in one short video. But I think one of the biggest things here when it comes to making your first sale is that you need to remember this isn't something that's going to just happen straight away. For some people, it will. And I know it can be disheartening to see other people's results and how well other people are doing, and you're still struggling to make your very first sale. But trust me, it's different for everyone. We're all at different stages here. But I think one of the sort of fundamental factors here that's going to help you create your first sale is to be realistic and treat this like a business. Okay, so you need to give Amazon time. And when you do make your first sale, I promise you, it's going to be one of the best feelings that you can feel. So I think in a future video, I'm going to try and make a step-by-step video on what I think is going to be the best way to make your first sale, as I don't want to make this video too long. Okay, so the next one that we have is niche research and keyword research. So things like this that people really get stuck with, and it can be very, very confusing. So what I want to do is try and give you an example of some keyword and niche research that I've been doing lately. And because I struggle with the same thing here, and I still struggle with it, where you think that you need to have a certain criteria. In fact, there was actually a comment on this. I'm going to find it very quickly. Okay, so yeah, this person here says niche research for me. Almost everyone says a good niche is where you have low competition and 2 to 3 paperback books with BSRs lower than 300,000. But whenever I find low competition niche, there are lots of books with no BSRs at all. So I can't tell if it's a good niche or not. So this is one of those things where we have this criteria in our mind. So we come onto Amazon and we look and we follow these criteria where we need to have, you know, less than 1,000 search results, and we need to have 5 books on the first page that only have 40 or less reviews on them, and each of them has to have a BSR of less than 300,000 or something like that. And what we end up doing is we end up trying to find these really, really specific niches. So we end up searching for things like sloth coloring, but for kids 4 to 8. So we've always been told you need to niche down because there's too much competition. We niche down and we end up with things like this. So we go 1,000 search results, so that looks good. Sloth coloring, but for kids ages 4 to 8. So this is a long tail keyword. Okay, so as we scroll through here, when we find actual sloth coloring books, so we're looking at BSRs of 1.5 million, 288,000, no ranking, nearly a million here, no ranking, no ranking, no ranking, no ranking, no rankings, no rankings at all on all of these books. A million, 1.5 million, maybe we have one here that's got like a sale on it from here to there. So I think when it comes to this here, when you look for these type of books, when you're doing your niche research, trying to find these like super specific niches, I think you need to ask yourself, is creating, for example, a sloth coloring book for kids aged 4 to 8, how much is that going to cost you? How much time is that going to take for you to create this book that we can see isn't selling particularly well? So I've been stuck in this rut myself for quite some time, but what I want to try and do is give an example of what I've been doing lately with my coloring books. So what I've done is I've just found a niche that I know has traffic going to it. So I've not cared whatsoever about the competition. Okay, so we know something like animal coloring book for kids is going to have lots of traffic going to it because it's not exactly a very niche market that we're going for here. And we can just look at some of these BSRs, 4,000, 2,000, 4,000, 17,000, 61, 58, 49. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of competition here, obviously, but there's also a ton of traffic. And that's what I've been doing with this type of book and what I've been having success with myself. So for me, I'd rather create a book that has lots of competition, but I know that there's traffic going to it, okay? So once I've created, and what I did with my books, I created these books in competitive markets. And what I've done from there is to try and rank my books for keywords when it comes to running my ads to these books, okay? So just because I have an animal coloring book for kids, it doesn't mean I'm trying to rank for that specific phrase, because that's going to be very hard to rank on the first page for that type of book. But within that, we might be trying to, when we're targeting with our ads, we might be targeting specific things like for kids ages 3 to 8 or 4 to 8, for 2 for 4, or for girls or for boys, or the specific type of animal that we have inside our book. So it could be a sloth coloring book, could be one of our keywords that we're running our ads to, and we can end up showing first place on the first page for some of these less competitive keywords. So we're not necessarily making our book around these keywords. And I think that's what people do. They find these keywords like animal coloring book for kids aged 3 to 8, and then I think I got to design a book entirely around that, and this is the niche that I'm going after. When reality is you can pick a broader niche like animal coloring book and then target things from there in your ads. So that leads me on here to say that I think ads are going to be a huge part of your business in future, just because I think this method of doing things this way is going to be much more effective than trying to find these really super specific niches. And I'm not saying these really super specific niches where you have low competition and lots of demand don't exist, because they do, but I wouldn't base your entire business and mental energy on trying to find these niches, because you'll find like it becomes so hard to keep finding these type of books because everyone's looking for them. And even when you do find them, like the guy says in the group here, the BSRs are terrible. So that's why I go very broad with my niche research and then target more specifically in my ads. And I've been having much more success with my coloring book and activity books doing things this way. Okay, so without getting too sidetracked here, if you're going to be taking this route where you are trying to enter into more competitive niches, then my main bit of advice here and what I've been following myself is that if you're taking something like a farmyard animal coloring book for kids, if you plan on doing something like that, then in my opinion, you need to do something that differentiates you from the existing competition, okay? Because you need to stand out to some extent, okay? So for example, if you saw that this book was selling well here, or this book here was selling well, then you could see how many pictures they have inside. So for example, they have 70. And from there, what you could do to be different is to offer 100 or 80 or something like that. You just need to make sure that you're kind of competing with these books in some way, okay? And even then, even if you don't necessarily do better or do more than your competition, people still buy multiple versions of these books. So I think as long as you're sort of not offering something like a 30-page coloring book in this type of niche here, then I think you can still make lots of sales doing things this way. I'm going to make more videos on differentiating and things like that in the future, but just know this is the route that I take when it comes to competing in more competitive niches. Okay, so let's move on now to another one here, very similar. We're looking at keyword research. So again, we're talking about keywords I think people are going to be using for their titles and subtitles, and also I think another thing that people get really bogged down with is the 7 keyword slots that you have inside your Amazon account. So I'm not saying that there isn't an optimal way of doing this, because I'm sure that there is. However, if you find yourself not being able to publish because you're getting this mental block where you can't find the right keywords, or you don't know what keywords to put in your back end, then I'm saying, and this has helped me because I still struggle with this side of things as well, not quite sure what keywords to use. But my advice here would be to not overthink it. So especially when it comes to the 7 keywords or the 7 keyword slots in the back end of your listings, is to definitely don't overthink them, because I don't think they're as important as you think. So in those 7 keyword slots, you do want to make sure that you're not putting irrelevant things in there. So, you know, if you have an animal coloring book that's targeted toward kids, don't put things like adults and seniors and things like that. You want to make all these keywords relevant. So Amazon puts this nice picture together of your book, but you need to not stress over this either. So what I like to do when it comes to the 7 keyword slots, after I've created my title and my subtitle, I make sure that I don't use any of the words that I've used in the title and subtitle. And then I quite simply come onto Amazon and I go through similar books in the niche that I'm entering, and I just go through and I just find words that people are using in their titles, and I find words that are being used frequently. So for example, we have things like easy, fun, activity, kids, toddler, animals. So you just look for things that people are using multiple times and then start putting them into your 7 keyword slots. Now obviously with your 7 keyword slots, you can fit more than one keyword in there, so you can just put as many as will actually fit, and it doesn't matter, in my opinion, what order you put these in. Okay, so go through Amazon, look through what other people are using on their listings. You could even go into some and just start picking up keywords that they use in description and things like that as well. But my main point would be to make sure that everything just is somewhat related to the book that you're selling, and don't try and put anything in there that's misleading. Okay, so don't worry about doing all this keyword niche, keyword research, using software and all sorts of things just to fill out the 7 keywords at the back of your book. Okay, just do it. Don't stress over it. Get it done. It's not going to be the end of the world if it's not 100% optimal. Okay, so for the sake of not making this video too long, I don't want to talk too much about your title and your subtitle and how you can create those. So if you are really struggling with creating your title and your subtitle, then leave a comment below and I'll make a separate video on that, because I think it's going to take a little bit of time for me to explain how I do things with the title and subtitle. Okay, so we have here niches with high demand and low competition and keywords. Again, this is something, if it's really holding you back, I'm not saying that you can't find niches with high demand and low competition. If it's really holding you back and you're struggling, just do what I've been doing and just go after the sort of broader niches, and just make sure that you're publishing books in niches that have lots of traffic going to them. Okay, so we have ads here, and this is one that people ask quite a lot about, is how we should run ads. Now I have videos on my channel, and there are plenty of videos that exist on YouTube that show you how to set up automatic ad campaigns. But I think one of the most important things that people miss out here when it comes to ads is that you don't necessarily have to make direct profit from your ads. Okay, so most of mine are around break even, so sort of 25% ACOS, and that's fantastic. So it's very hard to directly make money from running ads, as in to make a direct profit from the ads that you're running. And the purpose of these ads and the reason why I use them, so this takes me back to when I'm saying that I'm targeting more broad niches, like for example animal coloring book. What I'm going to be using ads for, and what I use ads for, is to find specific audiences within this broad niche. So for example, if I had an animal coloring book and it was targeted toward kids age 2 to 3, for example, or kids 9 to 12 for girls, as we can see here, this is a long tail keyword. I'm going to be trying to target multiple keyword phrases like this in my ad campaigns. Okay, so this is what we're using ads for. Well, this is what I'm going to be using ads for, is to target, instead of making books specifically around this here, I'm going to be targeting them in my ad campaign. So when people search for this long tail keyword, that means I'm going to have a good chance of showing up on the first page if I'm making sales from my ads. Okay, so even if I'm losing money on those ads, it's so much more important that I get ranked for some of the keywords that I know have traffic going to them. Okay, so again, let's just do another example. If I was doing an animal coloring book for kids, so that's one already that we could target in our ad campaign, is for kids 9 to 12 for girls example. Okay, so what we can do, and I'm actually using the self-publishing Titans expander extension here, which is quite cool. So for example, I could target something like farm animal coloring book, or safari animal coloring book, or baby animal coloring book, or small animal coloring book, or these longer keyword phrases like for kids age 4 to 8 boys. So I'm not specifically making these books around this. I'm just going to be targeting these when I create my ads. Even if I lose money on these ads, I'm still hopefully going to get ranked higher for every single one of these keyword phrases, which means more traffic, which means more sales. So the other important thing to note here when it comes to ads is that this is something that you need to be tweaking all the time, and also you need to have money to spend on ads. Okay, so having like a budget of $10 to $20 per month is not really going to do much for you. In my opinion, I think you need to have at least $100 per month to spend on ads, because it's all about getting information back from Amazon, because we're paying for this information and it's not always going to be information that benefits us. Okay, so we need to go into our ad campaigns, we need to see the data that Amazon's giving us that we're paying for, and then we're going to have to do things like tweak those ad campaigns to make sure that we're not losing tons of money, because we can't just keep leaving listings and ads going that are losing us money, right? So we need to tweak them, and that's going to cost us money. So for example, there's no point in having 10 books that you've got running ads to, and each month you have 2 clicks to every single one of those books. So you can't get much data back. You can't understand what's going on with your customers if you only have 2 clicks on your book. There's not enough information there. You got to have like 10 to 20 clicks on each of your book, and then you can decide from there whether you need to shut these ads off, optimize them, or just leave them going. Okay, so moving on here, we have trying to untangle all the ideas I have in my head and prioritizing. I have 6 different windows open in Canva with different projects. Now, this is something that I do myself, and I find that I can work this way where I'm working on multiple projects at once. However, if you find that this is something that's holding you back, then just know there's absolutely nothing wrong with just working on one project at a time. And the thing is, if this is something that's really sort of playing with your mind, where you're working on multiple projects at once and you can't sort of manage that, then I think you're going to end up with something that's going to be a bit of a hot mess in terms of the quality of your book. Okay, so what I would recommend here is just focus on one book. And if you focus on one book, make sure it really speaks to your target audience, the person that's going to be buying this book. Just focus on creating that book and publishing it. Okay, because I know the problem here, because you see people that have 4,000, 5,000 books and they're making all these sales, and you think maybe, if I'm working on one book at a time, it's not going to be enough. I'm here to tell you that it is enough, and that is exactly what I do with my work at the moment, is just focus on one book at a time. And you'll find that when you focus on one book at a time, the quality of that book is going to be much better than it would be if you're rushing 6 books or however many you're working on. It's going to be much better. So if you set a standard for yourself with every single book that you produce, every time you start working on one book, set yourself a standard to really speak to the customer that's going to be buying your book, really speak to your target audience, set that standard for one book. And I know that it doesn't seem like much at this point in time where you're just making one book, but eventually when you keep doing this, one book, then another book, and then another book, one at a time, and you set this same standard for yourself in terms of quality and the thought that you put into these books, this is going to be so much better, and you're going to start building something over time that's going to be absolutely fantastic. And you'll know also what your standards are going to be. So your standard is going to be working on a book that makes sense, and working on a book that's going to make you sales instead of working on numbers. Because that's what we do when we go for like multiple projects at once. What we have in our mind is that we need to have more numbers out there. So this is the best advice that I can give here. If you're struggling with this, just work on one book at a time. Okay, so that moves us on to another big one here, posted by Gary. So mostly I hear people saying perfection keeping them from moving forward. So yeah, this is a big one. And I think a lot of this comes from when we're online, when we look at other people's videos, or when we're in forums, we have this kind of meme saying where people are like, you need to focus on your quality instead of your quantity. And it makes you feel like whatever you produce, so if you're not making sales and then you say, oh, how comes I'm not making sales? And someone says you need to focus on your quality. And for me, this is a big deal because it stops me when I hear this, and I know it stops a lot of other people from publishing their book because they're worried that what they produce isn't high enough quality, because they've had experience in the past where they've put lots of effort into a book and it's not sold. And then someone says, focus on your quality. So that makes you think that you can't produce something that's a high enough quality to sell to people on Amazon. I'm here to tell you that's not true. Quality over quantity is definitely very good advice. It's very easy advice and it makes sense. However, when I think of quality over quantity, I think so if I'm producing a book and I need to have a book that looks the best in my niche, when someone says focus on quality, my head goes to, I need to have the best cover, I need to have the best keywords, I need to have the best interior, I need to have everything the best in my niche in order to make sales. And for a lot of us, this stops us from going forward and pressing the publishing button, because we compare ourselves to the top books, the ones that we find on the front page that are making hundreds of sales every day. We compare ourselves to these books, and I'm here to tell you that you don't need to do that. So the most important thing, and what I think of now when it comes to quality, is I think to myself, are there any errors in my book, and is my book misleading to the customer? Because the customer can see what the cover looks like. If they don't like your cover, they won't buy it. That doesn't mean that you can't upload it onto Amazon if it's not as good as other people's covers, okay? So provided that you're giving the customer what they want, so for this book example, it would be coloring book for kids, and it's themed around, I think, motorcycles or vehicles here, for example. So if you're telling someone that's what they're going to be getting, you just need to make sure that this is what's inside your book. Make sure things are formatted correctly, okay? Make sure there's no grammar mistakes in your title, the book cover, or in your description, okay? So this is all about offering a quality service to your customer. It doesn't mean that what you're capable of doing isn't good enough, okay? So just because it's not as good as these gorgeous looking covers, you can still make money even if you're not the best in your niche, okay? So that's a huge factor when it comes to not going through and pressing the publishing button. But that also does not mean you should produce and just rush things that don't make sense, that mislead the customer, that do look terrible, because there are some covers that just look terrible. So if your cover looks terrible, you got to be realistic. You got to say to yourself, does it at least look in theme with these other covers, okay? So if your cover is really, really miles off the mark, then I would say you do need to focus more on your quality specifically for your book covers. But other than that, you don't have to be the best in your niche. Okay, so we have a couple more concerns here that we have posted, and things like categories and again keyword research and things like that. So this is something, and I think people are going to disagree with me here, but I think the relevance and the importance that people put onto things like the categories and the keywords and the keyword research and all these sorts of things, I think we're looking at things where you could really focus on these and worry about these and struggle with these if you're already making money organically on Amazon. If you got the fundamentals right, then I'd start worrying about things like what specific keywords I need to put in the back end, or what is the exact category, or emailing Amazon saying, I want you to put me in this category, which I know a lot of people do. When we do this, we lose our focus on what really matters. So with categories, for example, just put whatever makes sense. Like, that's the best advice that I can give. Stop struggling. If you can't find a category, then you can put it like into a general category. But I don't think it's something that you need to really fuss over too much, because you're setting yourself a standard where it's going to be normal for you to struggle to find these things, okay? And it's one of those things I don't think with time it's going to get that much better for you. And to give you an example here, like some of the books I've uploaded recently, I've gone into the back-end keywords or the categories, and I've just picked things that are kind of relevant, that make sense. But I've not spent, honestly, nowhere near the amount of time that some people spend on it. I spend maybe 10 minutes doing the back-end keywords. I spend about 5 minutes doing the categories and things like that, okay? So as long as it just makes sense and you're not like misleading your customer and putting into crazy categories or putting crazy keywords, just my best advice here is to not fret over this as much as you currently are, because it's going to hold you back. It's going to take time away from things that are going to actually matter. If you want to learn and get better at something, get better at creating your titles, get better at creating your covers, okay? Find yourself an outsourcer who can make better covers, work on creating nicer looking descriptions, okay? And just work on, this is the most important thing in my opinion, it's being in theme with people that are in your niche, people that are buying from you. You need to know exactly what they're looking for. This is the real art of KDP, is being able to sell something to a customer on this page here. That's what matters, not your back end keywords, not the competition, things like that. Obviously, it's gonna, to some extent, it's gonna help you, but if you're really stuck with it, then just carry on focusing on the fundamentals, and in time, you're gonna start getting better at finding these keywords, at being able to pick categories quicker. But for now, still focus on these, because if you're telling yourself that the reason why you're not making sales is because you don't have the right category or you don't have the right back-end keywords, I'm pretty convinced it's not the reason that you're not making sales. I'm still convinced that the main reason you don't make sales is because basically the customer comes onto your page and they don't want what you have to offer. So all the categories under the sun aren't going to make much difference to that, in my opinion. Okay, so that is most of the questions that we have in the Facebook group answered here. So what I'm going to do from time to time is to keep uploading these type of questions into the Facebook group, and hopefully start making videos around things that actually really help you with things that you're struggling with. Okay, and I understand a lot of these things are mental things, like mental issues that you can't, mental barriers that you can't get past. So like I said at the start of this video, if you wanted me to create a kind of journey video, where I talk about the entirety of my Amazon journey, what's made me money, what I've struggled with, and things like that, it'll be a longer video, but I'd love to talk to you about that. So if you want to hear about that, just leave a comment below and I'll do that. And again, join the Facebook group, ask your questions in there, and eventually at some point they're going to get answered by me or by someone else. Yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you another one very soon.